Hey there, it's me, Gazbot, and what's going on? Well, this is sort of a vloggy horror production report A4 thing video. So what is happening? It is now the beginning of September. I'm coming off a string of a lot of conventions. I live in California, Bay Area, kind of near San Francisco, and in the last couple months I've been to New Jersey for family stuff. Then I was in Chicago for G-Fest. Then I was in San Diego for Comic-Con. Then I was down in Anaheim for Power Morphicon, and a bunch of little shows mixed in between those. And I have a few more coming up, but my really busy season is done. Now here's the thing. I have trouble multitasking. It's one thing to be like, okay, I did a little housework, got some art done, this and that. I could kind of do that through the use of lists. But I was going to G-Fest, so I was focused on getting Godzilla prints done and working on Godzilla sketches and getting that show ready and whatever. And then I had a few shows after that. And then I had Power Morphicon, and it was the same thing where I was powering through a bunch of headshots and doing a new print of the Tiger Zord and stuff. And I try to maintain work on the Horror A4 while I'm doing this. And I just have a really hard time doing it. It's different when there's client work, one-off client work that is. If I'm working on a big, long project, I have the same problem. But if I get a couple corporate caricatures or like a quick little thing, you know, one-day, two-day job, I could jump right back into the horror, my comic, or whatever else. But it's a twofold problem I have. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this, but everyone has their own difficulties and struggles. And one is enthusiasm. When I'm getting ready to go to Godzilla Fest, I also do Godzilla Night and G-Fest, two different Godzilla events, and I know I'm going to have people there that are looking for Godzilla stuff. And I know from experience, even those Godzilla fans are not going to be super excited about my kaiju book. A few here and there will buy them, but really they want Godzilla prints. So I want to have a good show where people are excited about my art. I want to make money, especially because I'm putting out money usually to go to these shows. And I want to be successful. And I also have a specific goal and an audience. I have a deadline. At this certain date, I'm going to be in a place where people want Godzilla art. So there's a reason to do Godzilla art and get it there. So there's the enthusiasm. And then there's also the skill and the vibe of just what I'm working on. The way I do my Godzilla prints, the style of the art is slightly different, but more the method and the way I approach it is vastly different to the way I would do a comic book page. Even my comic book, which is about a giant monster, it's just different. First of all, I'm doing color for those, whereas I do black and white for my own book. Secondly, I'm doing sequential panels and needing room for like word balloons and things like that and continuity, whereas a print is just one individual cool looking image. Flip over to Power Rangers, and it's a similar approach to the art as when I do Godzilla art prints, in that it's one image and it's color, but I was doing a lot of headshots of just the helmets. And so that's a slightly different size than I work for the Godzilla headshots, and it's a different style. It's more of a slick comic book style, and everything has a lot of shine because it's glossy, it's, you know, metal or whatever. The helmets are supposed to be, they're magic. What are they really supposed to be made of? But they're like a motorcycle helmet versus like this highly detailed, scaly monster skin. And the Godzilla headshots I do are a little bit more kind of gray with a few touches of color as opposed to the bright colors of Power Rangers. And even on the large one, when I did the Tiger Zord or the Megazord, the colors are much more vibrant and bright, a lot of angular straight lines as opposed to darker tones and fire and smoke and a lot of little crusty details when I do the Godzilla stuff. So my point is, and similarly, going back to enthusiasm, when I knew I was coming up on Power Morphicon, I was enthusiastic about getting those done because there'd be an audience for it and I want to do well and all the stuff I just said. So there's the enthusiasm where I'm going to have an audience, there is a deadline for this particular project I'm working on or multiple pieces of a bigger, you know, show. And then there's the switching gears for the type of art I'm doing. So now I've gotten to the point where I have two shows coming up locally. One is just a toy show I do all the time. I don't have to do anything special for it. The other is California Republic Comic Con in Merced, where there will be two Power Ranger actors, Red Dino Charge and Gold Dino Charge, Davy Santos and Brennan Meha, I believe you pronounce his name. I did helmet shots for both of those. They're done. It's not last minute. I sent them to the printers. They're on their way here, so I'll have those for that show. And everything else is I don't need. So I'm good for those. I do have Ranger stuff coming up in November where I do need to do some more work, but not right now. So I want to get back to work on the Horror A4. My plan was I got back from Power Morphicon, take a week, kind of relax, handle life stuff, and get some sleep and everything else, and then start working on a few helmets that I needed, like the two I just talked about. And then this week is supposed to be super blasting into the Horror A4. Today's Tuesday, I haven't started anything on the Horror A4. I did get some client work. I got two corporate characters. I did one of them. I had to do a few other things, but that's not the real reason. Yesterday was Labor Day, and Q had off work, and so I didn't take off, but I took off from getting back to work on the Horror A4. I still did things I needed to do. I still did house stuff, and I said, you know, I worked on some of the corporate job I had. But my goal of like just really hitting it hard is not happening. I'm about to go work on it now, which is what this video is about. But I feel like this week I'm going to reacquaint myself with the project. I'm going to start working on it, but I'm going to be doing page layouts, and like what I mean by that is just the sizing and panel borders and like kind of what I always call the nuts and bolts, the pre-production, the grunt work, where I don't have to think about it too much, just to get back in that headspace and get working and get my hands on it, even though I honestly don't want to work on it. I'm really not looking forward to it. It's going to be hard. You know, I'm out of practice. It's been weeks, months since I've touched a comic page. And I have to reread the script to remember where I was in the script, and I have the whole thing laid out, but I'm like doing the pencil. I call them pencils, but it's digital pencils. And I think I've got 6 pages done. I'm not even sure. I got to go look and figure out what page I'm on. And I remember the last time I left off, I was having trouble with the storytelling in the amount of space I had, and I was like, do I want to add more pages, which is a constant struggle because I set this up and it's been a project that's grown and grown and grown. I have 2 issues done. It's supposed to be 5 issues. I've set that limit. The script is done to the end, but I continually find myself translating the script, wanting more room for dialogue, which I can sometimes trim, or action, which you know is more difficult to trim than dialogue. And the answer is to trim it as much as I can, be smart, but then eventually I may have to add a few pages, which I've done in the past. But at some point, you get, you know, 22 pages, 24 pages, 26 pages, 28 pages. It's still kind of a floppy comic. Once you start hitting 30, 32, not only is it a thick comic, but the cost goes up. And I want to keep the same cover price, so it becomes logistical and financial problems as well. All that being said, I kind of decided, without looking at the work, I'm going to go look at it now. There's an image of the horror, the monster, doing a big destruction thing. And there's a whole scene of a bunch of stuff going on, and then there's this one image of destruction. And I remember struggling with it being kind of a small panel on the bottom of the page. Not small, but like a third of the page, or, you know, a fourth of the page, which is large for the page, but not large enough for what I wanted to accomplish. And if I take that panel out, all the rest of the panels have room to breathe, and I could play with them a little bit more and make the art a little bit more vibrant and larger. And then give a one full page splash of like this destruction thing, which is kind of what I should do. But again, my page count is getting really high. My page count is getting high, which affects the physical product, and does it make sense to have such a thick individual book? Can I maintain the $5 price point at that, or am I going to start losing money? And time. I've been working on this book, the full book and the issues, for over 2 years now. And my goal is to get issue 3 done by the end of this year. And even if I do that, that's still very slow. And every time I add a page, because I'm so slow, and not only, the pages on average take me about 20 hours to do. So that's like 3 days of work, roughly, you know, full work days, which I can't always commit to it, but even when I can, you know, that means in a week I'd be lucky to get 2 pages done. So if I add a page, I'm adding half a week's worth of work, and that's not even including all the adjustments I need to make on the other pages and the story as a whole to make it work. Yeah, so I'm not looking forward to it. I'm kind of dreading it. I know today's going to be terrible. This whole week might be terrible. I'm just going to be forcing myself to sit there and work on things that I'm having trouble with, that I'm not inspired to do, and that I'm not in the headspace as far as the approach and the style that I've been in. And I'm going to power through that because I'm a professional, and I'm going to work on it, and hopefully by the end of this week it'll start clicking. And whether it is or not, next week is just going to be, we're going on the Horror A4. All right, I'm going to go get to work. So it's the next day. That was Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. I did work on the Horror A4 issue 3. It was frustrating. I did get into the groove pretty quickly. I just powered through, and I ended up not having to add a page, at least not yet. Maybe that'll come further down the road, which is good because that it affects so much, including which pages face each other and things like that, which I still might need to adjust. Anyway, I digress. Let me show you what I kind of worked on. Okay, so these are the digital pencils for page 3, and why I'm showing you this is because of flow of action, which is something I worry about a lot, and every comic artist should, but when it comes to action, it's more important, and I also come from an animation background, so I don't know, that's just something I focus on a lot. So we got the horror, he's attacking this base, and meanwhile, the choppers are attacking him, and you see this guy piloting, and he's coming in, and there's this ship coming in, and then we see the front of the horror, we hear thum, thum, thum from behind. So the implication here is that he's not really being stopped by the choppers, but something big is coming from behind him, right? So the next page, slam, the thum thums continue. So if I go back, you see thum thum thum, so that'll be filled in by the letterer, and it's continuing over here. And so we know that that's what we heard, was this big mech either dropped from the ship or, you know, he's off screen, and he's knocking in the horror, who's knocking over the tanks and stuff, so he's actually hurting his own people, and then it moves on from there. But I've had trouble with this for a while because this makes it seem like, let's say he's on the ship, which is kind of how I envisioned it, but it doesn't matter if you think he's on the ship or not. It looks like he's going to get dropped here, and then hit him from behind. And this looks like the sound's coming from behind. But the next panel looks like it's dropped in front of him, and then because he's hitting him from the front. Or that he's coming, you know, if it was a movie, it might be a little easier because you see the ship coming, you're like, oh, that ship's going to get him. And then out of nowhere, this mech comes. But I don't think it works as well in comics. And so I struggled with this for a while, and I flipped it so that it was this way. But it still didn't make sense because he was still being hit from the front. And, like, the action left to right is a better flow for action, and this is right to left, which it loses some energy. So when I flipped it, it worked a little bit better. But what I found is that I had to flip it and completely redraw the horror, and this is what I changed it to. So the mech is exactly the same. I flipped it. The foreground is exactly the same, except I moved it down slightly and flipped it. But the horror I now have being hit from behind. It's the same thing where he's being caught off guard, but he's being hit from behind, energy shooting out of his face because he's like shocked and out of control. And I just feel like that whole thing works better because if we go back again, we go from this panel to that, and it flows better and makes sense. Now that was probably an hour or more of work to change it, but it was worthwhile. And a lot of times I put an hour or more work into changing a finger or a background detail that no one's gonna notice and it's not worthwhile. This, I think, was worthwhile. So that was actually a page that was done that I revisited. So then after that, I worked on this page, and as I'm looking at it, I realized another mistake I made. I have the horror here knocked down, and there's some copters attacking him. The next one, I kind of cheated it where he's already standing and he grabbed the tree, but I should have a couple copters flying in the air there. So that's a detail I forgot. And then this panel had already been done, but I reworked it a little bit to make the impact work a little better. And then I did this panel and this panel yesterday. This one is supposed to be this overhead shot. It was a little bit difficult to keep the characters on model. And this is something I realized over and over again, that I feel like I do so much pre-production and design sheets and turnarounds and all that, and it's never enough because there's always an angle I didn't think of or a detail I'm not sure of, or, you know, so it worked, but it takes longer than it should because I'm like semi-designing the characters on the page even after 3 issues. And then he pushes them back, and that's what I got done yesterday. Here's the final panel on the page. You can see I have the rough layouts. This is the mech kind of knocked back, and the horror kind of walking out to sea, looking back at him. He's either turning towards the sea as he's walking, or he's looking back as he's walking, but either way, he's sort of halfway in between the two. And I did this cleanup, which is pretty on model with the face and stuff, and the body, it's fine. It would work, but as often happens, when I look at my gesture drawing, my rough sketch, there's a lot more energy, the pose is better, it just looks better. And then I stiffen up and get a less accurate thing. So I've tried to go back and redo it, and this is where I'm at now. And you can see I didn't worry about the model and the detail, I just sort of laid it out. And it's awkward, the leg doesn't really work that way, but he's supposed to be this shambling mess, and I guess I'm thinking it's better to be less accurate and have more energy. What I'll probably do is try to take the head from here, since the head always gives me trouble, and paste it on here, and then try to clean it up a little bit, make it more model, and we'll see how we go. So I spent some time, I didn't time it, I'm gonna say 20 minutes, a half hour, and this is kind of what I had, and this is what I have, oops, this is what I have now. This is better. I'm happier with this, it's closer to my intention. It's still lacking some of the flow, specifically in the arms, or I don't know, maybe the head's slightly the wrong size. I'm gonna fiddle with it for a few more minutes, but I'm gonna move on because this is the pencils, and you know, I'll leave that for future Gaz dealing with the inks, hopefully. But I did get it to a better place from this to this. Today, I did this panel, which is after he knocks him down, he's walking off. That pose, now that I'm looking at it, kind of reminds me of Sasquatch, like that famous Sasquatch picture, which is not what I was going for, but it kind of reminds me of that. Anyway, that's where I am today. That's the end of page 5, digital pencils. I'll probably work on a little bit more, but I'm going to take a break, go for a walk. It's Thursday. I've been working on the page. I've been experimenting with a few things, and I was going to show you how I was having trouble with the horror's face, and I had kind of got it figured out and show you the process and where I went through and blah, 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 blah. And Photoshop once again crashed on me, and I lost between a half hour and an hour of work, which is awesome. I love that, especially because I was having a hard time with something, and I got it fixed, and I got it where I liked it, and then lost it. It wasn't just work, but it was like figuring out work, so I got to do that all again. Great. This is the panel I was working on, and basically the horror's ripping apart this mech, and I did the mech like that, and I need to put white under it to mask it out, but it's all being ripped apart, and I had finished the horror. Now, all the work I did in the horror is gone, so that's just super. It makes me feel awesome. But, yeah, I guess I can't even show you what I was going to show you the different ways I was having trouble in my solutions, but I can't do that, so I just have to redo it now.
So I redid it. Here's the initial you know, rough, I made the mech go away, and then you could see I did a secondary rough. This is sort of like rough pencils, I guess, and I want to have him punching through the mech. And then this is sort of the cleanups, which you could almost call inks, but this is more tight pencils to me. And I'm also a maniac because you don't see 75% of this, but I feel like if I don't do it all the way, then it's not going to work properly. And once again, I feel like I lost something between the rough pencils and the tight pencils.
Well, I redid the horror. I don't know if it's as good as I had done it the first time in that panel I'm talking about, but it's done, and that page is finished, and I'm frustrated, and I'm going for a bike ride to Target, where I will probably get a decaf, iced cappuccino cold foam thing with Splenda. It's like super unhealthy, and I'm also not getting the caffeine or the sugar, so it's just a bunch of chemicals, but low calories, so, you know. Hey, it's the next day. I didn't do any more work on the pages for the horror. I finished page 6 pencils, tight pencils, rough pencils, whatever you want to call them, pre-inking stage digitally. And so then I went for the bike ride to Target and all that stuff. And when I got home, I worked on a little bit of client work for my corporate caricature job. I had 3 I had to do, knocked out the second one. I still got 1 more to do. And I also started formatting the pages for my letterer and getting them up on Dropbox. So I have all 6 pages that I've penciled and gotten ready. I made sure they were in the right. I'm gonna print again with Comics Wellspring, Greco Printing, so I used their template, made sure it was there, made sure my letterer had a copy of it, because last time there was an issue where his lettering was fine, but it was sometimes out of the border of where printing was. So I gave him the art, but I also gave him the you know, template so it showed the borders ready to keep it in, so hopefully that'll make his job easier and less revisions for me later. And that was pretty much my day yesterday. Today, I got up, took a shower, brought the car into the shop to get something fixed that we brought in twice before, so that's awesome. It's a sound that still was not fixed, and so I had to go on a ride with the guy to like get the noise to make the noise. Couldn't get it to make the noise. So he's like, I don't know what to do. So we were done, but then I talked to Q. She told me to take these slow left turn wides and that'll make it do it. I did. Then I had to go back, get online. Basically, I was there for over an hour just to check the car in. So now I'm walking a half hour to IHOP to drown my sorrows in pancakes. And hopefully I'll get a little work done when I get home later, but it's gonna be a crummy day because I have to walk, well, I could walk home in a half hour. I'm walking to IHOP, which takes a half hour, and then another half hour home. And then when the car's ready, another half hour there. So an hour and a half of walking, over an hour of waiting at the shop, lost from my day already. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Well, you're going to IHOP, you're gonna sit there for a half hour to an hour. That's killing your day too. And you're right, but I don't care because I want pancakes. I'm hungry and cranky. 25 minutes later, and when that blue truck moves its big butt out of the way, you should be able to see a tiny little sign of IHOP. Can you even see it? Maybe you can't. Maybe I just can because of my hunger radar. Jumpy, jumpy. That'd be awesome if I could just and suck it up into my mouth like a Hoover or like Garfield, where I kind of just like flip it like this and go like a reverse barf fountain. That doesn't sound as appealing as I thought it would. So it's Friday. I did all the car stuff. I did come home, and I don't know why I have these on. I did come home and do some work on page 7. This is another frustrating thing. This was the rough breakdown I had, where you have the pilot and you have a bunch of text and things, and it's just supposed to be this kind of technological command center with this character being highlighted. So this was the rough I did, and you can see that the perspective isn't quite right here. Like, it's a little bit of a down shot, and this is sort of a circular room. This guy is more in the foreground, and this was not done correctly, but it was just done to emphasize the character. And as I go in to work on it, first thing I did was put in a horizon line here, so everything would be below that. And this worked out kind of okay. I wanted it to be circular. These I actually brought to the vanishing point, and these I kind of eyeballed. Then I copied and pasted this and just made a couple minor changes. And then I put this in, again, just eyeballing it, and copied and pasted it here. So that was working kind of okay. I'm not 100% sure about the perspective on these, but it wasn't too terribly bad. And then I decided to start working on the chair in the middle, and that's where I started having trouble. This I'm putting 2-point perspective with vanishing points here and here, and it just looks weird. It doesn't, I don't know. There's something off about it, and I can't figure out what. But I put the little top part in, that looked okay there, and I kind of faked in this elaborate chair he's sitting on, and I wasn't loving it. I wish this was bigger, but if I make it bigger, then it's out of scale with all of this, and I'm not 100% sure about the perspective. It might be correct, but just too centered, I don't know. One thing that helped is I went ahead and put this guy in the foreground. And again, I didn't use perspective properly. I just kind of eyeballed it and figured that he's on some sort of elevated thing off to the side, whatever, in front of everything. And by putting him in, I think it kind of fixed this and it broke up the composition a little bit. Then I populated it with people. And again, with these, I sort of eyeballed it to make the, you know, a little bit of a down shot and them getting smaller as they go back. I didn't put in the uniforms and individual characters of each person, just sort of the bodies. And then I have the pilot here. And I actually was originally smaller, and I made it get bigger, which again I think helped it. I don't know, like, he's a little bit bigger than people on the same plane as him horizontally, but he's vertical, so he's closer to the camera. So I kind of faked it that way. And then I just put in more detail there. There's some machinery back there that we can't even see, and I put in sort of the rest of the hangar, and this is where I'm at. And it's not bad. Some of the perspective is fudged. I wish he was a little bit more dynamic, and this is a recurring theme in all of my work, because I do a rough layout that I think is dynamic and has a lot of energy and works well, and then when I go in to try to make it work with proper anatomy, proper perspective, you know, proper size dimensions of the prop to the person or whatever it is, I lose a lot of the energy, and that's something I struggle with constantly, because I want it to look correct and I want it to look clear, but I often lose energy doing it. Now, this isn't done, obviously. There'll be another pass for inks. I might even go in with one more pass to make the characters, you know, put their uniforms on and stuff, and then I have to ink it. And I may adjust this, and I gotta tighten that up a little bit. So there's work here. There's still work to be done. But this was a lot of work just to get it to this point. And as a reminder, let me turn that off. That's where we came from. So with the exception of the middle, I stayed true to the layout, but just more detailed and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. But I think I'm done for today, or at least done for now. Got some work done, forced it out, even though I was tired and frustrated, but work done. Checking in once again from the car, red light in my face, but you don't have to put on the red light because we'll keep going. It is Sunday. Yesterday, Saturday, Q and I celebrated our 9-year marriage anniversary, which is insanity because I feel like we just got married. I guess that means I'm still having fun and love her. Well, that's great. Anyway, enough of the mushy stuff. Today is Sunday. I had to do a caricature job, which is why I'm wearing my Weird Al floral Hawaiian fake shirt. That's my kind of standard thing, unless they tell me to dress up nicer. This is my party guy outfit. Anyway, I haven't worked on the horror this weekend, but I did a fair amount this week, the 4 days that I had. Going into next week, I'm gonna hit it real hardcore mode, and I'm going to try to get a page a day done penciled, you know, quote unquote penciled. And my plan was to kind of work on the horror, get all the pencils done, maybe start the inks before I worried about prints for Ranger stuff, because that's not until November. And I only needed a few more prints to finish out the actors that are gonna be there, the headshots of the Power Rangers actors I'm talking about. But they keep announcing new actors. So I did a few. I was like, okay, there's a few more, and now there's more. So I think I'm gonna slowly start working on that as well, because with Power Morphicon, I kept saying, yeah, I'll work on that when I get closer, and then it was suddenly close, and I was busting out 3 a day for a few weeks, and I still couldn't come close to getting all the ones I wanted to get done for the guests that were gonna be there. And my nightmare happened where I was like, well, it's not like, you know, one of the guests, meaning the actors who play the Rangers, would come by and be like, hey, do you have me? Like, that probably won't happen. That was my nightmare, though, that would happen. And it did! One of the actors came by and I didn't have them, and you know, they were nice about it, but it was still like, oh, I'm sorry. So I don't want that to happen again. So I want to have at least one representational print of every actor that is going to be at the show, both because I don't want to be in that awkward position, but also because it makes sense, because I want to do a bunch of Ranger prints anyway, and people are more likely to be buying them for the guests at the show. If I see the guests, I can give them one. It's all just good business and art and whatever. So my point is that coming up in next week, my goal is going to be to try to get 1 page a day penciled of the Horror A4. Now, granted, the page I'll be starting with is 7, which I started this week, but I got one panel not even finished to the penciled stage. So I'm gonna allow that because that panel was difficult anyway, as you saw. I'm gonna try to do that and try to get 2 headshot prints a week done. So likely I'll do like a half hour or so a day on prints, or more if I need it. I'll do a half hour at least, but probably more on the prints. And yeah, I'd like to get some more art practice in. I'm not going to set a limit on that, but I'm going to say, hopefully I can get art practice in too. But the definite is that, you know, 1 to 2 print headshots done a week, this week, and every week until the show, and a page of pencils done on the Horror A4 this whole week. I have 6 done, so if I do 5 this upcoming week, that'll bring me to 11, which is half of a normal book. Now, my book is 27 pages currently. It might balloon out to 28, so it's not half, but it'll definitely, like, turbocharge me into the future. and put me in a good place mentally, and you know, where we are, like I'm making progress. And then I will also try to get some other more arty study stuff done if I can. One last thing I want to touch on before I close out this video is that I have sort of upgraded my Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop CS3, a version I own forever. It's like, not counting what I used at school or at various jobs, it's the only Photoshop I've ever actually owned. And I've used it nonstop until like 3 days ago. It kept crashing. I got a new monitor, and the resolution made it difficult. It wasn't working with Photoshop. It was like such an old version that I couldn't use it at the proper resolution, and Q kind of fixed it and changed things around so that I could use it, but certain windows would pop up and be off the screen, and like image resizing and stuff. Like if I wanted to change the resolution of an image, I kind of couldn't do it, you know, but I was just powering through because I was working and I didn't want to get sidetracked with technical stuff. And then it started crashing. As you saw, I've lost work, and it crashed 2 or 3 times this week. And so Q's like, well, there should be an autosave. And I'm like, not on this old one. And there might be a plugin you can get, but not automatically. She's like, well, I have Creative Suite, which she does, which is the subscription-based one, which I didn't really want to get into. But I can use Photoshop, the new one, which I think is called CC or whatever, for free. She's paying for it, but it doesn't cost me more for me to use it. And it has, she set it up so that it auto-saves every 5 minutes. So theoretically, I would never lose more than 5 minutes of work at a time. So I started using it. I don't love it. I often resist change because I'm so used to Photoshop, and it's a streamlined process. Same reason I haven't done Clip Studio, Paint, and all that stuff, even though it's supposed to be better, because the time I'll have to put in to get good at it is wasted time. Even though it'll save me time in the long run, I understand, but this is still where my head is at. I just gotta keep moving forward. And I have a few problems with it already. My first problem is that it's really basically the same thing as CS3, which is what, 10 years old at this point, and people keep rebuying it and paying subscriptions, and there's no discernible difference. Now, I'm sure there are tools that I haven't used, or maybe tools that I'll never use but other people use, but on the surface, I'm like, it's the same thing, which is bad for people that have been paying money. Good for me, though, because there isn't that huge of a learning curve. It's more or less the same. However, the few differences I've noticed, I don't like. And there may be a way to change them, but I'll have to look into how to change them. One thing is if I hold the stylus on the page, you know, the Cintiq too long, it sort of makes a circle, stops what I'm doing, and opens up the brush settings menus, which I don't want. Because a lot of times I'll just pause, or because it's pressure sensitive, I'll be trying to get a thicker line, and boop, it stops. It's very annoying. I have to figure out how to disable that. The other thing is, my brushes, except when I'm coloring, I generally use the standard 2 brushes. The pencil, like the hard brush, and then a softer brush, and then the pencil tool for when I'm doing flats. I have textured brushes for when I'm coloring, but really my inking is just the standard brush that comes with Photoshop CS3. And I'll start with like a 13 point and then go down to a 9 and a 5 and a 3 if I need it. And the brushes seem a little different, but the bigger problem is, because I can figure out which brush I like, is that the Photoshop I'm used to, you put in 13 up top, and when you want to switch, you click it, and it has the numbers that you could just select from a drop down. This one doesn't have that. It has it so there's a slider, which is much less precise and annoying. So I'm like, well, let me just go up 3%. Now I'm at 50. Great. I want to go from 50 to 52. I'm 70. It sucks. The other option is that you click it and you type in the number, which I can, but then I have to click, put down the stylus, mess with the keyboard. The less I have to touch the keyboard, the better. So the 2 options are super precise, but now I have to stop and use the keyboard, or completely imprecise. So once again, there might be a way around this, but I have to now figure it out. Again, this is the time factor where I'm like, I want to be working on my pages. I don't want to be worrying about this. And this also comes back to something I've thought about. I'm not going to do it in the middle of this issue, and I don't plan on doing it until I'm done with the Horror A4 completely, all 5 issues. Maybe I'll change my mind at issue 4, but at least till the end of this issue, I'm going to continue going all digital. But I've more and more been thinking that maybe I should do a hybrid system, because I definitely like digital for layout and for the pencil phase, because I change my mind a lot, and I move things around, and I resize it, and I flip it, and it makes it very, very easy.
I had to stop recording because I was next in line at the Taco Bell drive-thru. So just to finish my thought, as you look at this, my my smarm face aping another smarm face on the TV set, I was just going to say that the hybrid system I'm talking about is basically doing traditional inks, doing digital pencils, digital layouts, and then printing it out either on Bristol. Like, I'd have to get a new printer to print it on Bristol and Blue Line, which I know some people do. More likely, I would start off by printing it 2 sheets and putting them together, and then laying it on a light board with a piece of 11x17 Bristol over it. Again, I'm not going to do that in the middle of this issue. I might not even do it the next issue, but it's something I more and more think about for expediency's sake, for having original art I could, sell for a number of reasons. I think I'm guilty of getting way too zoomed in on things and working on details that no one will ever see, and if I work traditionally, that might help. And again, for consistency too, with these programs changing, It's one thing to change for, layouts and color, but the inks is where you're really going to notice the difference if you do it all. Anyway, I'm going to end it here, and we'll talk again next week or sooner, but about other things. I don't know. I have other videos that happen. Okay, goodbye.
Dust Devil. That's awesome. Get it, get it! His wind style is unbeatable. Hey there. This? There. Then today, I'm sorry, not today. Yeah, no, today. What? Oh, I see. What do you think of the portrayal of Bebop? Oh, I'm sorry, he's a warthog and you are not. That was unkind of me. It's ignorance, not hatred. Checking in. Oh. I'm doing